Hello, it is summertime, and you guys are amazing. I don't know, every time I look around, there's people that just care about stuff that is really beautiful, and I don't think the world is as bad as it is. This guy today, coming on, Justin Smith, who will remain anonymous on some levels. He's an amazing character. He's got an app that feels like Supra, but where people aren't together. There's some kind of, it's a vulnerability app. He's inviting people to be honest so that they don't lose their minds in this modern world. And so I sense an old world hope in a new world application. Justin Smith, you won't see his face, and we talk about why. That is coming up right now on Heavy Things Lightly. Don't forget, First Things Code, that's the promo code for our sponsor who sells beef jerky that's delicious, Conrad's Jerky Company. Also, The Art of Tamada is coming to Greenville at the KP Restaurant. 3 beautiful bands, including Carrie Menolakos, our special guest, who's a great singer and an Orthodox chick. Also, Shovels and Rope is coming. If you're from the South, you know about them. They're fantastic. And Darby Wilcox, top notch. All 3 playing that night. During the day, we teach Supra, and then right at the tour before the restaurant, before the concert, we do 3 big giant Supra tables. We're selling those tickets now. It's a fundraiser. August 28th, 29th, online. Check us out. First Things, Art of the Tamada. See you guys soon. Greg Gilbertson, bring us to the other side. Justin, I think there's a lot to learn. I think you have something special brewing up. I've just started messing around with your app, and people can't see you. So first of all, we got to explain that.
Sure.
Your face is blocked out because your app is voice. Just tell me what the heck is that about, and then we can go from there.
So yeah, sure. Hey, thanks for having me on, John. It means the world to me. And as I told you before we started, I just think so highly of you, and I've already learned so much from listening to your podcast. So thank you for putting them out. And It's just always nice to know there's good people in the world and to run into another one of them. So Thank you for what you do. You're an awesome dude, and I'm psyched to be here.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of the anonymity, the purpose of the app is to help people live in greater peace with themselves and reality. It's like, and hopefully in a way that could scale, meaning it's designed not for top down, but for person to person to kind of help each other with this challenge on a daily basis or however frequently they feel they need it. And I'm a member of the app. I started working on it because I wanted to help other people with this challenge. And then I continued working on it because I realized I needed his help as just as much as anyone else.
Right.
And so I think everyone who's working on a project of this nature, which is it sounds kind of obnoxious, I want to, make the world a better place and make myself a better person, blah. And, I've got this idea. It's it's if it works, it's not good for that person if they're known because they have no vanity and praise from others, criticism for others, the kind of thought of now I'm performing. How do I sound to other people now that they know? All these things that can interfere. I'm like every other human being. I'm a highly imperfect person, And so I just don't, the ideas are not really even my ideas. They're ideas that have been around forever. I just kind of strung them together in a slightly new way, or our team did. And I don't think it would be good for my spiritual development and growth if other people looked at me as somebody who, and I think I said this in a previous podcast that I sent you, but I look at Bill Wilson as a real hero. Yeah. I'm not in AA, but I think he was one of the coolest dudes and one of the most impressive people that's ever lived. And that's because he found a way to help people kind of practice Christianity, practice being decent to each other in a more broad sense, and for people who really, really desperately needed help. And he believed in anonymity if it worked for him. And I think it's the right move for anybody who's working on a spiritual or emotional project in which they hope to have any skill.
Well, you said something to me. Bill Wilson is the founder of AA.
Alcoholics Anonymous.
And you said, "Do you know who that is?" And then I did. You said, "Who's the founder of AA?" Or someone did to me, and I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Exactly," which is like, how many people have been helped by that? And so I get it. It makes sense to me what you're trying to do. Especially, he didn't have to contend with this world of social media. So, and you're trying. So I get it. It's like you're in alignment. So then let's go a little deeper. So the app is called This Life.
Yep.
You're trying to fix a problem. So I really want to get into like your motivations. But first, I'm going to say you're trying to fix a problem, but you're trying to bring people into a network where they fix each other's problem. But what's the problem?
I would say it's there's only really two challenges that human beings have in ever. One is staying alive, and two is trying to not be miserable about the experience, trying to grow in spirit as you kind of go through your life, as opposed to get reduced by negative emotion. Faulkner said it pretty well and very simply in his Nobel speech in 1950, which is like, it's the challenge is like the problems that lie at the conflict of the human heart against itself. Like the human heart is in conflict with itself, rather. And I believe after studying it for a while that we're really not well suited to make progress on like living in greater peace with ourselves and reality unless we can cooperate with each other, care about each other, be united. And that's obviously where our society is just like, it's a disaster. Like we're heading in negative emotion is on the rise unmistakably. Everyone can feel it. Everyone knows it. And negative emotion, whether it's in a society or an individual life, only leads to one thing, and that's more destructive behavior over time. And so now I would say is the time for people to start running experiments to push back on this. And, I think negative emotion has this quality both in the individual life as well as in like a group or society of making people believe it's really impossible. And if it was possible, it's not worthwhile to try. And that's a weird thing. and yet we all acknowledge whether you're atheistic or you believe in God or whatever, we're in this kind of emotional or spiritual fight, between these opposing forces. And so we ought to try to figure out ways, given all of that humans have figured out throughout history, like it's really incredible how far we've come.
And so it feels like, so you're calling in that way, negative emotion, energy, negative.
I call it the force of unhelpful negative emotion.
Okay. And in your lifetime, and you're not, let's just put it this way, you're not under 20 years old and you're not over 60. So you're something like a person who's experienced life. You're saying that you're seeing a growth in this unhelpful negative emotion. And so this is an attempt to reduce it and to create health. Would you say it's a health app? I don't like that term, but would you say it's something like that?
I guess so. I don't like that term really either. I would just say like, I'll borrow from you. Like, I'm going to become an athlete of acquiring truth is what you said in one of your podcasts. Yeah. And I really like that. And I think, the call that we all have is to be more of the person who we feel called to be.
Amen.
And how do we do that? It's a really, really maddeningly difficult challenge given our weaknesses and given our vulnerability to unhelpful negative emotion.
How'd you come to learn this? Were you trapped in a negative emotion event, or like, how do you know this?
Yeah, I would say, like you, I'm a bit of a weirdo.
I'll take it.
Yeah. I would say it's a combination of environment and disposition. So by disposition, I'm very introspective, very sort of like emotionally sensitive, for better or worse. My mom said, I think when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, you're very affected by your environment. You're more like me. And your father is kind of not like that. And it stung a lot. It stung mainly because I knew how true it was, and I didn't like the sound.
I know, me too.
I didn't like,
me too.
Yeah. I didn't like the sound.
I got called womanly a lot. I get like emotional about stuff, but I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. But no. There can be something wrong with it. But keep going. Sorry. And I'm going to grab my glass too, because
go right ahead.
We're going to have to have a toast. 1 second.
And then I would say environmental, my dad and mom lost a child, like a brother, right before I was born. And my dad, who had always kind of had a lot of energy and been a pretty emotional guy himself, very bright guy, he pitched into depression, and then he swung into mania. And basically that was the rest of his life, and he had like very strong sort of like physical constitution. And so his manic phases would last for months, so I gotta, and he was, it's like an exaggerated view of somebody caught in a negative cycle, and granted there's like an actual physiological component in his case. But it was just, okay, there's something that's got a hold of my father, and I have like, he appears to be unable to break himself out. And so maybe I, rationalist, thoughtful, studying sort of like what reality is all about, can figure out some way to break him out. And, I never did. And I did think that one of the things that would have been helpful for him was to be able to hear other manic depressives talk about how awful they felt about themselves, how guilty they felt about their horrific behavior when they were manic. And
forgive the noise. There's a guy literally, I always forget the day they come by, but he's blowing leaves. But here's the thing, there are no leaves. He's a dude with an engine.
He just straps it on and goes out there and makes noise.
Could you hear it?
Yeah. It was pretty loud.
No, it's ridiculous.
I thought it was a chopper flying right over your house.
I know. We'll leave it in. Andrew, don't cut it. There he goes. I swear there's no leaves. I'm looking at him right now. He's just hanging out. So whatever. It's long guys. Whatever. It's America. Got to take care of lawns. So, Amen. Okay. I cut you off because this is deep. I want to get into like sort of some of the presuppositions of how you got started, but keep going. So I see it. So you saw your father struggling, and so
I saw my father just like sucked into something that was awful, and that he couldn't escape from, and that and then of course he couldn't hold down a job, so we had no money, but my grandmother had some money, so we were able to stay in this really wealthy town about 40 minutes outside of New York City during the 1980s. And so it was like crazy status conscious and, just pretentious. And a lot of good WASPs, honestly, had like died, and a lot of awful Catholics had moved in. My family's Catholic, so I can say that, but very status conscious. And I just thought, it was probably helpful. At some point in my 20s, I said to my mom, we probably should have moved out because I was too self-conscious about being poor. But there was an advantage too. And it's like, I realized I didn't really want what these people had. I didn't want to, kind of like live in a town like that. And that was very helpful. And then to just follow up on your question, it's like, I've been interested in like, what is this experience? What is reality kind of like all of my life? And how can we make it less miserable? Like I was unhappy with the direction of the world long before it was in vogue, and I realized, because my father was a good person, I realized this has happened to lots of good people. And like, I don't want to continue to lose good people to this force. Wow. And I don't want to get any more beaten by it myself than is absolutely necessary. And the longer I studied it, the more impressed I became with how strong it was and how good its record was in terms of keeping people from making emotional or spiritual progress, in terms of keeping them from living in greater peace with themselves.
Well, I want to actually I want you to explain how that app works.
Sure.
But do this with me in my life, and then they got translated into our podcast. And really, then it got transmitted into our work, home and abroad, I associate a lot of what you're describing with a type of Enlightenment style understanding, in other words, a materialist understanding of the world that was making us spiritually sick. And then when I went overseas and started to get embedded in cultures where they hadn't had the Enlightenment, I was right. or I feel right that there's an actual, the illness you're describing is a component of culture. It's not even, you could argue it's in the synapse or something. I don't know enough about medicine. Do you also equate this, what you started to see as a type of, let's just call it deficit or illness? Do you think it's cultural? When you say we have a problem, who's the we? Do you mean Westerners? Do you mean like New Yorkers? Is it particular or is it the whole world?
Yeah.
How do you see
Yeah,
that?
that's the thing. This is, John, this is the human condition. It's just like our culture has made it worse. Mm-hmm. But this is when has humanity been good enough? Like, answer me that. Like, when was the time when you think like people were really being decent to each other and making progress in terms of like, yes. So it's since the beginning of time. And
let me can I add something on that?
Yeah.
Because you did ask, and I would say no time. The way the Orthodox understand it, and we'll get into that with you too, because I know you're sort of like Orthodox adjacent, but I don't know that the app is quote Orthodox or anything. But I've really been blessed by this understanding that there was a shift in the actual ontological reality of people's lives when Christ was resurrected, and that the last 2,000 years are a type of new world that's not like the old one and not like the material one we live in. It's kind of like an invitation to reality. And so in a lot of ways, I would say people kept killing each other. I get it. They were sinful and selfish and lustful. I get it all. I will say there is a different kind of substance to the ability to heal yourself since Christ's resurrection. I would argue that as an Orthodox Christian. And then I know people are like, what is he talking about? But I would say there is a medicine that didn't exist before the resurrection that exists now in this new eschatological reality. So that's a fancy way of saying it could be a little different with Christ. However, what do you think about that?
I don't know if you're suggesting that, there was a short, brief period of time right after Christ's resurrection when people were more decent to each other. But what I would say is more generally is that the message of Christ is not winning.
Okay.
The message of Christ is not winning. And I'll just make it more generic. The message of people trying to figure out how to be less miserable and feel better about themselves in a way that's connected to other people and loving is not winning. We live in a very dark world. And it's getting worse. And most people who are honest and who pay attention even a whit can feel that. And so, again, it's like, listen, I love the message of Christ. I don't think anyone's ever had a better message. But I also think I think if we continue to, in that, sort of aphorism, like if we continue to try the same things and expect different results, it's kind of crazy.
Well,
we have to try new things.
Yeah. And so this application and your way of seeing, because it's very fascinating. So, okay, let's get into that. And then we'll get back to, I don't think we can avoid more conversations about motivations. And not because I want to pick on anything. It's just fascinating because in a second, well, you tell us, but in a second, I think, guys, you listening will be like, wait a minute. I think I get what he's doing, but where is it coming from? So, let's say I open the app. I could do it right now. I did it. So there's sort of three ways to operate in the app.
I don't feel shame anymore.
So there's an understanding that when I go into the app, I'm going to contribute thoughts and ideas and be in communion, if you don't like that word, to be in relationship with other people, but none of it's video, right? So explain sort of how it works so I get the idea of the texture. People can get the texture and feel of what the app is.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best to make this somewhat succinct and hopefully followable, but you tell me if I go off track. Sure. So yeah, it's audio only, it's anonymous, and the purpose is to try to not be beaten down and ground down by the grind of day-to-day adult life, and so the main purpose, if it's working, is people will do it for themselves. It's just like very easy to get lost in the world and a default consciousness. And so the main first experience is you with yourself. You hit record and you talk about anything that you think can basically, help you become a better person, a better version. You had a great phrase on this, and I'll steal it. You try to make yourself a better person for a moment in time.
Yeah.
And maybe someone notices. Like, that's the way you make the world better. Like you were contrasting this with kind of the utopian idea that people want to go out and make the world better.
Exactly.
Right. And so the only way that this really works is if people try to make themselves better. So everything happens in your life. Your boss is a jerk to you, like you get in a fight with your girlfriend, you don't have enough money because some check that you thought cleared a while ago. Somebody's a jerk to you and looks at you weird or is talking loud on the phone at the supermarket. There's all these things that kind of like push you back from the person that you want to be.
And so this is the spoken notes portion, let's call it, of the app, right?
Yeah.
Where you're recording with yourself as per the conversation that you're having with yourself.
Yeah. And listen, it can be anything that you want to be. You can just kind of anything that you think could help you, right? Yeah. Anything that could make you less negative, anything that get you more conscious of other people and how you want to develop in that moment and over time. And so maybe it's thinking about something from childhood that sort of like makes you feel bad about yourself. Maybe it's thinking about how to be considerate for somebody when you come home that night for dinner, even though you're in a bad mood, how you change that around. You try to grab control over your consciousness. You try to become aware of how you're feeling, and you try to, kind of.
And those recordings, they're a diary. They're not really accessible to the community on the app, right? They're just yours.
So after you record every recording, which we call, again, spoken notes, you're presented with three options. Keep it private, spiritual hitchhike, which is, we'll talk about in a second, where you get paired up with one other person anonymously who you don't know, and it's just for that day, or delete and re-record. So that's it. If you decide, you know what, I talked about something that's deeply personal, I'm not comfortable with anyone hearing, that's just for you. I just made a to-do list, or like what time I talked about how I'm going to go about doing my laundry. Right. That's not going to help anyone. So let me just save that for me. It's mainly for you. It's not to force you into any, but if you say something, you say, you know what, I talked about a problem. I was feeling really down. I figured out something that was useful for me, or I prayed and I felt connected to God. I felt like I opened up some sort of pathway to the love of God. Maybe that helps somebody else. So you've got this byproduct of engaging in sort of like trying to spiritually nourish yourself, emotionally free yourself from like the negativity, the natural psychic pain of daily life, and be more of the person who you would consciously want to choose to be, the greatest freedom we have. And that's a very, very difficult, like day-to-day challenge. Just like, sometimes we're hungry, sometimes we're tired, whatever else. So you just try to get in a relationship with yourself and your God, or your God, that helps you live and develop in the way that you want to be.
And the tactic or the means is of spoken word. Yeah. See, for us wacky Orthodox, what I've realized is there's a lot of ways to do stuff that might lead to health. I don't know. I just went to a doctor and he drew blood. Drawing blood, the way. But I get suspicious about words as the answer exclusively, but this is a type of way. So what happens after that way of entering the app?
Let me just respond to that real quickly.
Sure.
And I appreciate you saying that, but I would say in order for people to really kind of like figure things out, there's really only two ways to do it. One is to write. Difficult problems require like long form thought, right? To actually kind of like make progress on. And so this is the most difficult, never ending challenge each of us will ever have. And if we don't write down, it's like you can have a thought and then or have an emotional experience, but then the next day it's gone. If you said anything, if you came up with an idea that unless you have a weird mind, like a really savantish type mind, it's gone. So what you want to do is you're kind of like building your foundation of like of your spiritual and emotional life.
This is okay.
In what sense?
I don't want to challenge. I want to move stuff around and see what happens with the room. Let's just move the couch over here for a second because I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I think someone could argue. My problem is I lived in an African village with no running water and electricity. So I have these, and we still do. So I have these deep-seated prejudices that usually end with a dislike of overthought and over scholasticism and over intellectualization. So I might say this to you, and how would you answer? It might be that the writing it down and the collecting of all of our thoughts is actually making us more ill. How would you respond? Is that true, or am I just being a jerk?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to be too glib about this, but like James Baldwin has a pretty good saying on this, and it's that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And I think that's right. If you don't like how you're eating, and like you don't actually kind of like try to put something tangible into the world to try to change your direction and your energy and be conscious about it. Yeah. Listen, the entire world encourages us not to think. That's what capitalism largely does. Tune out. Turn on your phone, look at the television. So like the idea that thinking about your life and talking about it, the only other way to experience things is emotionally. And that means like, interacting with people and maybe music or whatever else. But like, you're building a person, like you're constructing who you're going to become.
Through your thoughts.
Through your thoughts carry emotion with them. They carry energy. Yeah. Like I've cried many times when I'm talking to myself. Sometimes I'm just listening to myself. What's going on in my head right now so that I can like actually confront it.
Right. That's the part. We'll come back to it because I want to hear how I want to finish you.
Let me just say this. God spoke reality into existence. Like
that's right.
Have to speak. We are in God's image. We are called to speak reality into our own existence.
You got that right. I think sometimes we forget we're the creature though. We're not the creator. And sometimes we're actually being given thoughts that are not meant to be analyzed, understood, or even listened to. It's sort of like most of our thoughts are probably things we should not think about again. I'm just trying to figure out, not on your app or anything, in my own life, how do I recognize the ones that I should swipe left on or whatever? And in the Orthodox tradition, none of your thoughts are your own. They've been given to you by other people, by demons, by angels. And the idea is you're supposed to sit with the ones that are godly and dismiss, and most of them aren't godly. So I don't know. Fascinating though. Keep going, because
let me just say this one thing. Good luck dismissing the thoughts you don't like. Like if you know how to do that, like please teach the rest of us, because all you do when people are in a bad situation and they've got negative emotion is ruminate about the same thing over and over. So the goal is to get into your head so that you can get out of your head.
Man. All right, here's one little thing from the fathers. Again, you're talking to an Orthodox guy, so I hear things and I'm like something clicks. One way, so do you know, what's your relationship to Orthodoxy as an idea? Like have you been introduced to it? I don't know your background on this because you're a Catholic guy, yeah?
Yeah, I was raised a Catholic. I've been to Orthodox Mass a couple of times, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts, but you have not gone into detail on the podcast that I've checked out about Orthodoxy. So, and I just did like one search and some of the distinctions between Catholicism and Orthodoxy. But other than that, it's very, very superficial.
One of the things, I'll throw this in the mix, and we're just having a conversation. I like this. So there's this notion that there's a narrative or a river, let's call it a river, that flows, let's just call it out of the resurrection and into the church. Let's just say that it might not be true. And that narrative, it has real texture, like it's a real thing. And you can get in it and get out of it. And you find it in all the traditions of the liturgy and all the traditions of the writing of the saints and all the traditions of your family. That's and what happens is when you become really familiar with those, now it's hard because it's like Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sin. It's like chanting. So one of the reasons these things are chanted is because when the thoughts come that may not be, let's just call them godly, you chant into those thoughts the tradition of the church. In other words, you attack with that which you are familiar with. The problem is most of us aren't familiar. Like me and you, I'm not in it enough. And what the Orthodox say is if you're in it enough, that's why you got monks and nuns. They go to be fully immersed in the narrative of the church so that they can absolutely recognize when these things are attacking them. And when you're in it enough, what happens is you use the medicine of that narrative to get rid of and dispel the negative thoughts. So that's not to say your app, I think your app, when I was in it, is doing that, but I think it's doing that with like a Freudian, like a modern telos, which by the way, I want to get into. It's super fascinating. But I push back only on that a little bit just to say that you're right. People do focus on their, I just don't know if their own mind can get them out of it. But that's a thought.
I would say a couple of things. One, the practical question of like, how is the world going to get better if the only way to, kind of align yourself with the holiness is to do chants. It's just not, it's not practical, And the second thing I would say is, I think that, I forgot the thought now, but
well,
I think,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I think that like, if I think we're getting attacked by negative emotion basically all the time. I think we're constantly under attack. And I think to try to not have any other strategy than to not
prayer. I think prayer is probably the strategy I'm talking about.
And I would be as happy to have people come on and pray as I would to do any other strategy.
Well, tell us, I love this idea that you have this spiritual hitchhiking. Tell us the second thing, the second sort of aspect. I think, you call it spiritual hitchhiking when you join the app. What is that?
And this reminds me exactly of what I wanted to say, which is you said that I don't think that people can get out of it in their own head. Like they're going to get trapped. Right. And I completely agree with that. I think the best you can probably do is pretty close to a stalemate. In your own mind. And I think probably you're still, when you're aging and all the rest of it, I still probably think you're losing ground. And I think what really changed your odds and give you a better chance is working together in a cooperative way.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's spiritual hitchhiking. So after you record something, whether it's a prayer, an intention, a poem that makes you feel better, whatever it is, you get paired up the next day on the app with somebody else. And the only thing you know about each other in general is that neither is a contact on the other's phone. So we don't want people getting paired up with their boss or their cousin. The more that people can be honest and feel comfortable doing that, as you said, like we have to be an athlete of acquiring truth. It's like about how we feel as well, like so that we're not so vulnerable to it. Then they speak and they get paired up with one other person. It just lasts for that day. There's no names, there's no anything. And you get to hear either the first 3 minutes or the last 3 minutes of what they said to themselves or prayed or whatever else they did. That gives you so many benefits, but it really gets you out of your own consciousness. It gives you perspective on the nature of the challenge. Like negative emotion is these weird things. It distorts your ability to kind of perceive things. It makes you think you're uniquely suffering, et cetera, et cetera. So this is like, it really taps you into the idea of like empathy and that other people are experiencing. And in my experience, this naturally had the effect of making me want to be a better person because I realized and remembered that there are other good people in the world, and like, I want to be in a position to help them. I want to be in a position to be a good person for them. I don't want to be a drain.
That's what I heard when I hit on that and I heard someone's recording and it was weird. It was like a window into vulnerability. It reminded me a lot of a good Supra. A bad Supra is different, but our dinners that we throw from the Georgians, they tend to do something like invite you into somebody's life, right? And that's what I noticed in the app. It kind of gave me some goosebumps. I'm like, I know this feeling. And for you tough guys out there, you're like, oh, this sounds gay or whatever. You're not understanding. You're having the same exact problem. You just might not be entering it. You're all of us as humans are doing this. The question is that, like, how do we enter into understanding who we are and, and being vulnerable? I saw that on the app, bro. I saw it.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. This does make me want to push back on you though a little bit, because
Good.
I forgot that you're doing Supras and you're passing. What is that? I mean, are people not talking there? It's like, that's all they're doing. They're trying to tap into emotion through speech. So I don't understand. You're not doing chant dinners.
Well, here's what I mean.
Why are you coming after me, bro?
Well, here's why I was coming after you. It's really not about the app. The practicality of it, it totally makes sense. I'm coming, what I'm coming at is, like, you drew well out of, like, this app is beautiful on one level. You drew water out of some well to build this thing. Like, you just didn't go like Justin Smith, Shazam, and built it. Like, there's some tradition is what I'm getting at that you're drawing on in order to provide medicine. And the medicine is sort of found in the app, right? And so what I'm getting at is there's a well that I would say is super deep. This is what I meant to say just minutes ago. And that well is something like Orthodoxy for me. Doesn't mean it's for you, but I have a feeling it might be for everybody because I'm Christian. That's my thing. And so I'm trying to figure out what your well is. And then, by the way, I'll drink some of your water. Like, I'm not like against it. I'm trying to figure out what it is. So the reason you might have felt me coming at you was I'm like trying to figure out where's the ontos? What is the very deep being of this app? Where does it come and spring out of? And I sense it springs out of your desire to help people. Like, but that doesn't make you immune to problems. There's a lot of people that want to be like, bro, come to Africa with me. I'll show you a lot of projects that were about helping people and they were terrible. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what's the well? That's why I was asking those questions. The practical application, the thing itself, it did what a Supra did. I felt it doing it, but without the presence of humans. This is really important. Without seeing their fingers and their face and their wrinkles. That's a big difference. And so we can get into that. But again, I'm not here to shoot down your app. I'm actually glad you came because it's fascinating. And I want people to go look at it because it's really fascinating. And what it is, to me, it's more evidence of our problem. You're a good dude that said, I got to do something. And we're all seeing the same problem. And that's really important. That's why I'm glad you came on, Justin. But does that make sense when I'm talking about the water well? Like, I'm trying to figure out what your water well is. And
just remind me, because I want to get back to that point about the Supra being in person. So if we could just kind of highlight that to swing back to.
Sure.
And the deficit of this. So I would say my well in many ways is Christianity. And I didn't realize it until like I probably got a little older because I found the Catholic Church like pretty dead experience at like my parish at least. And so I thought, I don't like the way the world is arranged. I don't like the spirit with which people are living with each other. I think it's, like we're not heading, I don't like living in a world that I think is like heading towards a cliff and accelerating. I don't think anyone should. I don't think anyone should accept that. And then I realized, as I said, when I looked into my own experience, that I wasn't developing in a way that I felt good about, and I didn't feel bad about that because I examined the lives of people who are, superhuman, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Mr. Rogers, and all of them suffered with significant negative emotion. It wasn't just a problem for me because my dad was manic depressive. I grew up poor. I'm Irish. I'm melancholic, whatever else. This is the human condition. That's like when I finally was convinced there's no escaping this problem. We all face it. And the question is, how are we going to face it? Are we going to face it on our own, largely locked in our own, little cell? Or are we going to figure out a way to help each other, learn from each other, gain perspective from each other, encourage each other in non-phony ways? And the problem throughout all of history is that when people try to do this work in person, it becomes almost intolerable immediately. People want to say how, like so much of Christianity, what I hate about Christianity is it becomes like a Jesus loving contest. And I think there's no interest that Jesus had in coming here and having people compete that's the anti-Christian. So Christianity is like, yes, getting cool with Jesus in your own life, but it's also like, how do we actually care about each other?
Yeah.
And if people are locked away in negative emotion, not even leaving their house, which, if you look at like the stats in our society these days, it's horrific where things are going.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we reach as many people as possible who are in pain? Like, my well is like, I watched a good man get crushed by something, and nothing could stop it.
Love of your father. You had love of your father. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I said, okay, lots of other people are being tormented with varying levels of this problem, and it is dementing the world we live in.
By the way, I want to say, Justin, that's sufficient. You don't have to believe in what I believe in. It's sufficient to make something beautiful. In other words, love of your neighbor.
As a Christian, I feel like I'm called to figure out ways to connect and exchange love with other Christians and be as decent with them as possible and with everyone.
Right. So that's helpful. So there's a structure, there's a way that you're trying to work on this. Do you get nervous about it being an app? Let's do that in-person thing that you said that we'll put a bookmark on.
No, there's trade-offs with everything.
Right. How do you sort out the trade-offs in your head? I guess you can't do everything all at one time, right? Is that how you think?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And let me just step back for 1 second. This is an experiment, and like what I'm hoping is that because you're a very decent person, like it's clear from listening to you.
You talk to my wife. She might come in here and she'll be like, he's very decently, he is not decent at cleaning the kitchen. How about that? That happens.
I'm going to be on your side on that one, John. And
are you married, by the way, Justin Smith?
Pardon me?
Are you married? You got kids?
No, I'm single.
You're single?
Yeah.
Look, what just went off is my matchmaking tendencies. My wife and I like matchmaking. I'm not kidding.
Surprised.
I'm not trying to derail you.
You know what kind of people? Yeah.
All right. You guys can't see him, but he seems like a good guy. Like he looks handsome. I'm not, saying I know about this stuff. But I'm serious.
Thank you. You're a handsome man too, John.
I decided to wear. My daughter gave me a jean jacket, and I'm like, I have never worn that jean jacket on screen, so you're getting the first jean jacket look.
Looks tough. Looks cool.
All right, go back because I just adore what you're trying to do because I think
what
it feels.
We get from the app being digital.
Yeah,
right?
like tell me about. Okay, why'd you do a digital app to make people healthier about being together? Like, answer that.
Yeah, well, I'll start with like, there's a lot of ways to answer that question, but like part of it is, I don't know if you know people who are damaged, but people who are damaged don't want to leave the house, and they are the ones who need the help the most.
Right.
So everyone says when they're around depressed friends, oh, go out. Like they have no interest in going out. The first question, hey, what have you been up to, Justin? It's like, I want to jump out the window if I've been lying in my bed for 6 months.
I know. I do that all the time. I make that mistake by asking those questions all the time.
And so it's just like it creates negative emotion creates a self-reinforcing cycle, And so some other things that are more practical about digital. One, you have your phone all the time. Like, there's never a time that basically a modern American doesn't have their phone. And so bad things can happen at any time. You get fired. Like your significant other is, calls and screams at you for no reason. You've got to sort things out in your brain. It's like, we can't just chant these problems away. Like there's actual day-to-day living that we need to go through, and we need to practically try to like think about how we can act most in accordance with what we actually believe in the person who we feel called to be. And so that's the other advantage. And then the third thing is like, you can be honest. There's no need to think, oh, you know what? That's Jennifer that I kind of have a crush on down at the way. And that's John who, he's such a good guy. I really want him to like me. So maximum honesty is really important. What like your demon, what I call the force of unhelpful negative emotion for shorthand, is like, it wants to keep you in the box. And what's like the biggest danger it has? You seeing reality more clearly. The more clearly you see reality, the more it's doesn't control all the puppet strings on you. And so that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to cut some of the puppet strings that like after years of thinking about this, like you get kind of phrases in your head that feel bedrock to you. you know?
Yeah.
And one of the things that, and I, you know, you're a smart guy, and like, I can hear when you talk, like you have things that you really have like worked on. They're like almost like solid pieces, you know? And yeah, one is that like, we're all getting played, you know, and
Yes.
if we can
Yes.
zoom out of like this
Yes.
voice that's playing us, we have a better chance of getting less played.
What do you think that voice is? Like, just as a reality, what I had a philosophy professor say.
I would call it a demon.
Yeah. No, but really, like, you know, this has been a long discussion in the history of philosophy and theology, which is, who are you talking to? So you might say demon. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, I know what it says in this tradition. It'd be important to know what that voice is, right? If we're going to try to, I don't know, take it on.
I think that's one of the questions, like free will or something like that. I think it's so unknowable that don't waste time with it. You know, like I don't care. I think of it as a demon because that's more fun for me. Like, you know, and I do think we're made in God's image, and at least in this world, there's a devil, right? So I think we've got some negative force. And the weird part about the negative force is if we do make progress against it, if we do become like more of who we feel called to be, if we feel better about ourselves, it's going to say, you're welcome. I did this. If I wasn't here, you would never have built these muscles. You would never have learned this. You never would have had these deep experiences of opening yourself up to love. Like, I was the thing that made you great. And yet what I tell people is like, it doesn't, the actual, like, you know, metaphysics of it really don't matter. You know, what matters is like human experience. There's a negative force that acts as if it wants to win. You know, like as if negative emotion wants to be the defining motion of your life.
Yeah.
And make you into a smaller person and more destructive. And what does it want? It wants to make your life as painful as possible, psychically and physically.
Yeah.
And so it's a cold-blooded murder who's going to take the credit when you come to the end of the contest and if you actually make progress. But it wants massive destruction. And like what happens at the individual level, most people, thankfully, are not homicidal. They just go into themselves and they destroy themselves tragically enough. But some small number are homicidal. And I believe this is like a big history of the world, is like these people get control because everyone else is kind of so unhappy that they want to flip the cart. And I think we're in the danger zone right now. And I think not to run experiments if you come up with something that's not ridiculous is irresponsible. And so like, I really believe we're in a dangerous time in human history as we go through a greater transition than we've ever gone through.
But it feels like the app calls you in toward a communion, toward union with another person, whether or not you're listening to them or maybe even exchanging back and forth, right? That happens on the app.
Yeah. So thank you. I really appreciate that. So yeah, you get to listen to somebody else's, what they go through just for that day, 3 minutes. They can pick the last or first 3 minutes. And then you can, no, please. And then, sorry.
No, it's okay. This happens on pods. I just had a guy with a leaf blower not blowing leaves. So don't worry. Oh, and we didn't do a toast.
Toast.
Could we, Altamada, and then at the end, I'll give you a chance to Ala Verde, which means you, but I just want to toast to this thing of recognizing something like suffering, or like having the attentiveness to go, wow, that's not right. And that's sad. And then doing something to try to help, which is what you're doing. So I guess to the courage that trying to do something like that is Gagi Margos. Cheers to
Gagi Margos.
Is the hope that at one point through the app called This Life, there's communication that leads to something like a healthier back and forth, a less isolation. And do you hope it ends with meeting of people, or it doesn't matter to you? That's not maybe a part of this project.
I think in this phase one, realistically, it probably doesn't end in like a, physical meetup, but certainly down the road, I think if like, again, whether it's This Life or some other project that ends up doing that, like I do believe that when you get people to meet up, you want them to be most poised to like actually experience good emotion. And if they're buying into everyone's Instagram feed and TikToks and whatever else, they're really tight. Everyone else is kind of doing stuff and cool, and I'm not enough. And so when you hear everyone else kind of like, when you say stuff that you're worried about people knowing, which you can do on the app, and then you realize I didn't die, somebody else heard it, whatever, it's not that big a deal. It's kind of like, again, like you're getting less played by this force. You're able to breathe a little bit, and so you asked that question about communion. Like, yeah, I think this is a type of communion that opens up the possibility of a deeper type of communion, at least in terms of honesty, than you can get most anywhere else in life. And what I would say is like, we are deeply, deeply emotional beings. We're emotional beings who think. And so like, it's a really difficult challenge. Are we better off not knowing how each other experiences this? Like, we want to know as much detail. We want to see as much. It's a nuanced, very detailed, easy to forget, easy to get taken off chart with challenge. And so you just want to pop in occasionally. There's great people there's endless people, self-help, spiritual leaders, whatever else, who can tell us and remind us of stuff. But I think the real value is like seeing somebody experience emotion, real life emotion captured in the moment. I think is really valuable and really interesting in terms of its potential for how it can help us spiritually. And then you could be somebody who's been in your parents' basement for the last 6 months and not left the house a whit. And you could hear somebody else whose mom is having surgery and they're concerned. Now, you've got the chance to care about somebody else, and you've got the chance for that caring to feel like it actually matters. We think about charity as like, here's the loser and here's the winner. The winner comes down and gives the loser something, some token thing, and isn't everybody feel great? It's like the winner. We're all losers.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. We all
That's
have the
so
chance.
good, Justin.
Yeah.
And then once you get there and understand that, it weirdly makes all the other things possible. Well, this is the idea of death. Sorry, but yeah, you're nice, Justin, and I'm trying whatever, but we're going to die. When you realize that you're that character, it's way easy to relate to other people's vulnerability because you're aware of your own death, or let's put it this way, you're aware of your own loserness. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I like that, what you're saying. It's also a very elegant app. The voice is very calming. The way in is easy. The way out is easy. It's very, let me ask you about that. What are other people thinking about this? I saw you, you did a podcast with Yale. I feel like in this world, they would understand it. Do they like it, or what's going on?
Everyone who's come to the app has enjoyed it, and I think unequivocally everyone who's done spiritual hitchhiking where they get paired up with somebody else has found it a wildly, surprisingly powerful experience. Like they actually say like, oh, that was good for me. That had value, like it's so easy in this world to hate other people, like whether it's politics or resent them for what they have, or isn't that person so vain? And we're in this awful competition that is getting more and more intense all of the time. And it's like we're living in a society that's making it more and more, and it's more and more antagonistic to trying to live in greater peace with yourself and other people and reality. And so like we need to find ways that can spread over quickly. Like, in person is a million times better ultimately, but voice has a very special place in spirituality, and the honesty has a very, very special place in spirituality, and the two can be combined. And that's why I say it's an experiment. So the final thing you get in the spiritual hitchhiking is you can both send a single text message to each other. Hey, I hope your mom's surgery goes well. I hope you get out this week, and good luck. And,
So you could get out of the app at that point because it was the number that you shared, right? I shared my number when I started.
Oh, yeah, but nobody sees your number.
Yeah, they don't see it. But I could text if I wanted to within the app, and then
we ask people not to do that only because, again, like, why have not people? Why? Maybe we'll figure something out down the line, where that works out. But like, part of the reason that people don't want to do in person, at least those who consider themselves to have like some life, which is most people, are like, I don't want this person being like, oh, let's get coffee. Give me your number. Like all the rest of it.
Right.
They're kind of like a weird dude, like no offense. They're kind of like a weird dude, And so you think like, that was nice, but I don't want to go again because that puts me in an uncomfortable position. So it's like, the point is, listen, everyone needs help with this problem. Like, yeah, we do have a thing where if like you come across somebody, like spectacular, we don't want to infuriate people. So you can kind of put them in something called your inner circle.
I saw that. Mm-hmm.
You can say, okay, well, I'd like to have the potential of being paired with this person again. And like, when we come to the time where we have enough data, get some smart people who, understand and kind of appreciate what we're trying to do, and just say like, what do you think we should do with this? Let's run a small experiment on like 1/10 of the app people and see how they find it. And, this is just phase one.
Is this changing your life?
It gives me hope that there's something that, and this is one of the main goals of the project, that like there's something that we're not doomed as a society, that it's not unrealistic. Like, if we're not trying to do things that can scale, then we're kind of doomed. Like, negative energy and the weapons we have and the chaos that's brewing, all the rest of it. It's like, it's going to not, we're not on a, I don't like our odds. And I don't think if you're a smart person, you can look at where things are headed and say, I like our odds.
How often do you go on? Daily?
I record, several times a day. Honestly, I have for years, even before I had the app. It's just, I find it so useful for clarifying like what I actually believe. And then I find it so useful for just pragmatic purposes. Like, I find myself like very tense in the morning or something like that. I step outside. I say like, what's going on? Let's get some priorities down. I don't want to type that down because I just need a break from my computer. I need to get some fresh air. I need to step out somewhere. Yeah. And I need to just not feel like, oh, I'm not going quick enough. You can talk very quickly and say like, okay, well, you want to do X, Y, and Z, but like, it's not realistic. Can you do Z? Nah, I don't think so. You kind of negotiate with yourself. You kind of think through, what do I have to do today? How do I want to be? And so I use it for a lot of different things. And then I think, how do I want to talk about the spiritual emotional challenge, which like is a very annoying part of our society and sector, where people who are talking about this and trying to help people.
Well, they don't talk about it, or they, you know what I mean? It's like,
or they try to sell a book, or, like telling you, I know how to live and here's all the things you need to know.
Well, what do you do about that? Because here's the problem. There's a marketplace, and we have a restaurant. I got to find a way to get people in there. Is there a challenge to trying to keep this thing pure, where people are meeting and sharing their thoughts in a pure way and also selling it? Does that suck? Or how do you do that?
Again, like everything else, I'm just kind of like waiting forward, and we'll see how we figure this out. Like, I would say it's like a high line, for threshold matter. Like, I would never want to get like Silicon Valley rich on this app. I don't want to live in poverty, but, I don't want to really make more than, like maybe a first year lawyer or something like that. You want
to pay your bills. Yeah.
I want to pay my bills and not be poor, be able to go out to dinner occasionally and stuff like that.
For sure.
So, I think it would be gross for somebody to try to really profit on this. I didn't do it as a nonprofit. There's just a lot of filing requirements as a nonprofit. You have to have a 3-person board. It's like, I'd rather kind of just pass it along to somebody when it's, like, I trust myself. The only thing that's important to me in my life, after watching my father and observing how I believe everyone else lives and what they feel, is like, I want to live in as much peace with myself and die in as much peace with myself as humanly possible. I don't care if everyone else is chasing something different. That's the game that I'm playing. And I find that game to be very, very difficult, especially when I'm a person who is affected by other people's energy and we're heading in a shit direction. And lots of people are vanity, greed, money, different types of gambling, different types of currency. It's like, it's all heading in the wrong direction, more division, more isolation. And so like, how do we fight back against that? And I think yes, in person, but it's impossible to scale in person. So we need things. And I don't want to, other people annoy me so many times when they're trying to do this stuff about like, oh, let me tell you, everyone's trying to impress each other. Like anything I watch on Instagram, for the most part, where somebody's being brave and telling their story, I'm just like, it's impossible to tell how much is.
Well, it gets co-opted. It gets co-opted as its own like product attempt.
Yeah,
like you're like, are they being honest, or are they just selling vulnerability now?
Yeah, so
I know. This is the whole thing, brother. This is the whole thing. I think I'll put it like this. The reason I'm really glad you came on, and we're just a little podcast, but it's cool to have you on. Well, let me put it this way. You're not, I talk to a lot of other sort of ortho adjacent people. So here's what I want you to know. I think you and your most excellent attempt to be loving, I think you're a new type of person that exists in this modern world that is actually working out of an existential fear. Like there's something beyond just the practical. You know, people try to fix stuff in every age, but I feel like you're trying to fix something that's like dark, and you're not alone. Everyone's dealing with this darkness. It's a different kind of. What's that?
Aren't we the descendants of Cain?
I didn't hear you say it again.
I said, aren't we the descendants of Cain?
Oh, there you go. But here's the thing. We've avoided those conversations about the descendants of Cain for a long time. Like, I'm not even talking about like Bible buying or conversation about Jesus. I'm just talking about a real honest look at like how we haven't had these hard conversations. I think you're an example, and there's many examples inside and outside of my faith, the Orthodox Church. It's just going to be a groundswell, bro, of people saying, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. Now, what happens after that? I don't know. I think you got your app, we've got our restaurant and this work we do, and everyone's going to have these. But I do think there's going to be a coalescing of sort of like the people who are still too practical and just worry about the bottom line and trying to create the society in their own image, and then people that are not trying to do that. And I think there's going to be a reckoning. And so guys like you are very interesting to me.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it. And as I said at the outset, I find you heroic. So, but yeah, I would say, I would love to have Orthodox people on the app. Because,
well, that was your approach. You were like, hey, let's get me on. And I was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. For sure.
I just haven't come across people anywhere near as decent. You're one of the most decent people that I've ever come across. I said that at the start of the conversation. I really mean it. It's like you truly care. The Peace Corps, teaching in the Bronx, doing First Things, doing a podcast. Yeah. It's like, it's incredible. And you have a sense of
bleeding
humor.
Heart, bro.
You have a sense of humor, and you're smart as hell. And it's an incredible combination. And so I've not met anyone like you. So I'm just incredibly impressed. And as I said, I bet the people who are smart, who have good taste, who listen to you or watch you, just like value, like who you have on as a guest. And they're probably really good people as well, higher ratio than most people. So even if your audience isn't giant, like you're amassing an army of good people around you, John.
Listen, brother, first of all, clip that, Andrew. Nobody ever said that before, so clip that quick. Put that out. But also...
Wait, that's not going to be in the show?
No, I'm telling them to clip it so that we can like repeat it and put it out.
Play it for your wife.
Justin Smith / this life guy says nice things about John. Hey, listen, man, I'll say something heartfelt. People watching right now are like, John, what are you doing? I will say this, though. It doesn't matter to me. One of my favorite people in the world is a fat-handed guy in Georgia who, whenever I'm there, he visits, and his name is Kaka. And you can just sit with the guy and whatever, and then it gets deep, and then there's some tears, and then it's not. And then it's like, that's like a man who may not have been very articulate about anything, but he was crying for a reason because his heart was filled up. And he wasn't crying because he didn't get his, I didn't get my paycheck on time. He's crying because like the deep ideas that you're presenting here welled up out of his heart. And I love these old men, these old world men like this. And so to me, I don't know if you're one of those guys, you feel like one of those guys that are saying something like, this isn't right, and we should be together. And that's probably enough.
Yeah.
Now we could talk about our wells and where the water's coming from. I think that super matters. Maybe we come back and do another pod.
Yeah, but let me just ask you this, John, and not to like equate myself to a prophet, but like, what do you think prophets did? Like they went out into the wilderness and they had to talk to themselves. They didn't just no one's brilliant enough to come back with it all figured out. You have to make it rote in your mind. You have to purify your thoughts. You have to do, as you said, like this, you have to become a spiritual athlete. And so, and you said something in a podcast, it's like, about how podcast, all we do is we kind of talk, we have ideas, and how do the ideas become manifest?
Yeah.
And I think if we're doing this like just in the physical world in which there's like the internet, things can go around a million times before they go. We need to have an online presence, and I don't want to hear anything other than people being honest about how they don't like themselves, about how they're trying to be better, about how they had a nice time when they were on vacation. They're so grateful for this moment in time, and you capture it and all the rest of it. And so that's all I'm trying to do. It's as ancient as anything, as any good religion, which is like, how do we not destroy each other and ourselves more than we have to? And how do we live? And how do we rise in terms of our like ability to receive and exchange love with each other and like give love to each other?
What should people do if they want to check out your app? And we'll put it in show notes, but like to give your ad so that people can find you.
Okay, cool. And let me just say one thing before I do. There is a third experience. You don't have to talk to yourself. You can just come twice a week and we play with somebody else with their permission. And everyone in the group has a shared experience of hearing how one person who, wasn't the best or wasn't the wisest. It's just like somebody who was honest, who we thought, you know what, that helped us kind of like remember something that's easy to forget, or, wow, that was a beautiful prayer, or anything, just something that feels like it could be helpful to people and it's honest. And what I would say to people is like, where on the internet can you get anything honest? Everything,
you're right.
Everything is performative, so like, I think that's really valuable for the human soul, is to experience like something intimate and beautiful about a person trying to like be conscious of their life and make choices that can allow them to feel, grow in peace and love, And so in terms of people getting it, and again, like all I would say is if you love John, please come to the app. You're a good person, and try to help us figure out a way to help each other. And right now we're only on the App Store. So it's This Life an Experiment and if you want to go to the URL, it's jointhislife.com. And
I found it easy.
Pardon me?
On the App Store. I found it easily on the App Store.
Yeah. And it's you just put in your phone number. The only reason we do that is just like, if it was just email, we don't want to have any terrorists. There are some people who are not good shape in their life right now, and it's much easier to weed out bad actors with a phone number. After that, nobody sees your phone number. The only thing we listen to is like a person's first or second recording, just to make sure that they're not, for like 2 minutes, just to make sure they're not doing anything weird. And people we should probably keep an eye on that, like, oh, this person seemed really good. And then if we want to listen to anything again, we text you and we say, hey, is it cool if we listen to this recording, a couple of recordings on this week? And if the person says yes, no, whatever, we respect that entirely. And if we do select you and you say, hey, yeah, go ahead, and we come back and we say, we'd like to play, you have to approve everything before it goes out. Like it's just like, it's your stuff. And so anyway, and then, you download it, you record stuff, and then the next day you get paired up with somebody else and you experience what another human being is going through. And, you get to try to help each other.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, I will. We'll put this out. Look, guys, for people who are watching the pod, you're like, "What are you doing, John? Like some sort of advertisement for this?" No, this is the conversation we have all the time on the pod, which is like, what have we lost in the new world, the West, and how do we regain the things we've lost? And the old world informs us. I feel like your app has some sort of weird old world moment to it. That it made me uncomfortable because people were really honest on there. And it made me, and then I felt very comfortable suddenly realizing, oh, I see what this guy's doing. I see what Justin's doing. So let's see. We'll keep talking. And I hope that, I'll try to see you in New York. I'm going to throw a couple Supras. So maybe we can be together there. That'd be nice. And guys, remember, his face is not on here because it's kind of actually, it makes sense to me, which is, just like the app doesn't have faces, it sends out logos, the word, and then it leaves the other stuff for later. I think that's why you're not showing your face. It's in the spirit of the app, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, we'll talk. I can assure you guys, he's a normal guy. He just lives in New York, which is abnormal.
I'm not hideously disfigured.
No, you're not. All right. I thank you, man. I thank you a lot. And we'll be in touch, okay?
God bless, John.
So many things there. I will say this. There was a moment in the app when I got in there, and I didn't spend much time with Justin's app, but I spent enough. He is identifying a problem. And the problem is what the hell? Why are we all so isolated? Oh, isolation brings incredible like pain and suffering, and then what we call craziness. Or you start to become unable to relate to other people. This is like known. And I don't know. I love people that are trying to fix spiritual problems. So here's Justin trying to do it. So many blessings to him. Go check out the app. Like, get on there. See what it is. Beautiful people doing beautiful things. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. That's the way I'm looking at it. On the other hand, I don't know. Maybe it's a demonic tool for your brain to blow up. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I'm just trying to bring interesting people on the podcast. And in the end, someone trying to do something out of a love for his father, I don't know what's wrong with that. Ain't so bad. So check it out. I do think a lot of people will like this app. I do think it's an answer on a lot of levels to being isolated. So, Gagi Marjos, don't forget one other thing as you go through life. There's probably nothing anybody could ever say ever that is actually that important, sticks and stones. And what I'm figuring out is if you can sit still long enough in the words, it's like a nurse that can recognize where the wound is. You can actually see these things. And like Tamada's teaching me to do this. So I'm like really thankful for all you guys that are interested in the Supra. It's like special. So join our Art of Tamada network, which is called the Tamada Vineyard. And if you're a restaurant owner, put Supra in your restaurant. If you run a conference, put Supra in your conference. I'm talking about the most secular conference that ever was. Like, I don't know, a medical training conference. Oh, I don't know, with like brain doctors. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs this. And it really enlivens your event. So we're partnering now with all those people all over the country, and we're sending Tamadas, and we're just doing cool stuff. And the Tamada Vineyard is the place where the grapes grow. The grapes are the things that are happening to me in his life, which are like insight into your own spiritual degradation, which allows you to be a lot closer to people who are suffering. So when you're a Tamada, that happens to you. It's like a priest. You hear enough confessions, you're like, oh my God, how can I ever judge anyone? Right? I mean, or you go Pharisee style, you can judge everybody, but that's like crazy because everybody has problems. So like, what are you gonna, you're that one guy? It's like a joke. It has to humble you when you're really listening carefully. So come join our Tamada Vineyard. Join us for trips to Georgia and Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Guatemala, or Colombia. We're setting them all up with Gratitude Travel. Or come to the Art of Tamada. Or join as a field worker. Or become a donor. Monthly donors are the best. Or don't do any of those things and just keep watching our podcast. Or become an astronaut and go into space with NASA and ruin your life. Or that was a little strong. I don't know. I just don't trust that whole scene. And it's not because I think we didn't go to the moon, which we probably didn't. It's not because of that. It's because it's a lot of money for something that feels really far away and dumb, when all of these problems, like Justin is talking about, are really present and right next door. Goodbye. I love you.